in
Right.
an instant, ended his career.
Oh,
And that was a torsion field around him,
I don't know what
too.
the hell you're saying, but you sound like me when I know what I'm saying. You're just going explaining, and you're on the right. You have the logic
it has
in it.
something to do. It has something to do with the frequency as well. But not
from what I understood, the torsion field, the torsion field is a frequency. The torsion fields are frequencies.
Yeah. Right. Okay, yeah.
And frequencies are polarity. Remember from last, I don't know if you heard the last year, actually. Frequency is polarity. Polarity is power, so torsion fields are also power.
Okay, did you say
do I need to know this
polarity?
on the final? Will I be tested on this?
There will be a test. Pop quiz.
Yeah, what is this stuff? You follow it, Carolyn? No, even Carolyn doesn't follow it. So Susanna has staked out a territory of understanding or overlaying that she's got a world monopoly on. It's pretty impressive. I mean, what about the simple point that when I'm beginning with the beginning image of with a magnet sticks to something. Now, apparently, that's my eyes lying to me, right? That's not what's going on.
Yeah.
Well, the magnet, they stick together, but all it creates is it creates a larger magnet with the two poles further apart.
Oh, the poles are always repulsing each other?
Yes. Yeah, because
polarity is repulsion.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, that's a breakthrough. So polarity is repulsion and magnetism is in between or makes polarity bigger.
Magnetism is always the pulling apart.
Of polarity.
It's actually the invert.
Oh, you mean malaria and tuberculosis and cancer are interchangeable? Is that what you're saying? Oh, I was going to say magnetism, polarity, frequency, and vibration maybe and duality are interchangeable? Is that what you're saying? There's a magnetic aspect to polarity?
Magnetism is to polarity. No. Magnetism, polarity, and frequency are different things. But magnetism pulls, polarity is your direction, and the frequency is the power.
I can't work with that.
Right. I don't know. Hold on, I might have that mixed up.
Polarity is this division.
And these two
polarity is these two things.
Magnetism. Not
what?
Frequency is not the frequency doesn't create the magnetism. It's the force between the two polarities.
Does what?
Say that again.
What's the force between the polarities? What is it?
And the force that is created by the two polarities is the magnetism.
And there's a repulsion between the pole and magnetism as a result of that.
Yes.
Or is inside it.
But the frequency doesn't create the magnetism, I think.
So did you just say that magnetism is the force created between two polarities?
Yes, that is how it's always defined.
But then the frequency has to do with that happening again and again and again and again or something like that.
Frequency is the action. Frequency sets the pattern.
Right.
And magnetism pushes you to it's either a push. It's how do I say this? What is the impetus to your action?
What is it?
Magnetism. Magnetism.
Let's figure out what the first part is. Magnetism is something in between polarity.
Yes.
That's what Roxy said. It's a force.
Polarity would be your...
Everything has a frequency. Everything is frequency.
Well, we don't know what that means.
But the force fields
that'd be the relationships.
Polarities, I suppose.
Well, I got this far with McLuhan. He said objects are unobservable, only relationships between objects are observable. So frequency as a noun is not understandable, but you start bringing in other relationships, which you're saying, right. Roxy. You bring in other factors. What did you call it? You just said magnetism or polarity. I don't know what you said. But
the three things of polarity, frequency, and magnetism are interrelated. The frequency is what sets the pattern. It's what sets the importance of the action. The magnetism is what pushes you towards that. But the polarity is what is sets the direction. It's your desire to do.
Well, you would have to be near. It'd be better to have hands-on in an environment where you had to do something. Like, how do you fix the car? Like, explaining frequency, magnetism, and polarity for a flat tire is useless unless you're there with the flat tire being shown how to fix it.
It's the thing that you can't really use words for.
Yeah, you have to be there and do the stuff, and I hardly do anything.
Well, if you go back to the example that Ion used in the last recording of the rewrite that you did, it was having to do with the car going to El Paso.
Right.
With Renee.
That's what I was trying to remember. So
and in that example, he said the frequency was Renee setting the importance of the action. And then the polarity was the direction. El Paso or the town.
And magnetism was
what pushed her away from the home, her house. It pushed her out of the house.
Yeah. Here's my notes. Now, we did start off with conductivity tonight. So I have here...
Oh, I didn't know that.
Conductivity and polarity is the road, the frequency is the driver, and magnetism is the car. So the polarity is the road, the frequency is the driver, and magnetism is the car. And it actually says, and the World Series. So this was an issue last rewrite. It's a continuation of the World Series question. Oh, because it was predicted. And then I was trying to predict how...
Steve was trying to find out who was going to win.
Right. So you have here connection/conductivity. And we don't... polarity is the road, frequency is the driver, and magnetism is the car. But I don't know what to do with that. I don't do anything with that.
Well, then later, that's what he said. Later, Ion said that polarity is the desire to do or the direction for Renee. The frequency was what sets the importance of the action or sets the pattern. It's what you line up to.
Bob,
magnetism is the car. Polarity is the road. Oh, yeah, he started talking about direction. Maybe that's in another part of the notes. Yeah, driving a car.
Carried it on further.
Yeah, no, I got it. Mm-hmm. Driving a car and polarity is direction. Mm-hmm. Magnetism pushes away from the home. Frequency sets the pattern of distance. That's the notes I have. So you have someone driving a car on a road. Why break it into these three parts?
Well, he also said polarity was the desire to do. So it doesn't have to be the car. It's just whatever it is you want to do.
Your direction, your intention, your driving a car.
It goes back to the beginning of it when it was being talked about with the creating on the chip body level. And let's see, there's kind of like a root to all of this.
Okay, apply it to Halloween. Here it is Halloween. That's the direction. What are we pushing away from for the magnetism of Halloween? And what's the frequency setting the pattern of distance? Is that trick-or-treating? I don't expect you to answer that, but I just quickly do another.
Well, here's this. I have this quote from Ion using ice cream as the example. So if your frequency is the same as ice cream, you won't have to do a thing. Ice cream will be right there instantly, no action on your part required. The greater the distance between your frequency and the frequency of ice cream is the distance it will take you to achieve your frequency /desire.
Oh, I knew that. But what the hell is magnetism polarity in there? I didn't know that. I just used that tone. I just wanted to just go, I knew that. Humans say that. I was rehearsing how humans say that. Practicing.
I have another note here. Magnetism equals application of the power /polarity.
Okay.
Right. Is that the word power, P-O-W-E-R?
Yes.
Yes.
And Ion has said that frequency is polarity.
I have here polarity is power.
And
yeah,
polarity is power.
I have that right here. 3 hours and 2 minutes and 30 seconds of session number 39. And then it says needle pulling thread.
Yeah, it feels... Go ahead.
Did you hear Ion? He's explaining why he's gone mean. It's pretty interesting. It's a month before his resignation, and he's telling we've changed, and he's talking about it. He's just spelling it out.
He's saying that they were saying that they can change things in the physical world.
Yeah,
that was a new thing.
That's where it all started, was talking about that, because then it was talking about intention and intend versus intention. Like, intention is an isness and intend is an arness.
Now, here's the part I like, and I don't know if I understand it, but I notice it and I like it, is that we had this loud Zappa celebration, and so the rewrite comes in with Steve screaming his head off, and that was so cute.
I heard that
Everybody was loving it.
And you were calmly eating and saying, "Don't have a fit," or it's too early to have a temper tantrum.
Yeah, I was saying, Steve, you're trying to do me, but you're not doing it right. Because I says later, man, you guys heard nothing until you hear Bob and I go at it. But Steve was doing a pretty good job at it. That was his first attempt, I think, to wrestle Ion to the ground. And he should be here today to hear it, but he's not. You know, he blew it. He thought he's finished. He thought he'd heard everything that Ion could offer him. That's a big mistake.
What I thought, it seemed like a pretty good example of how Ion sets people up, because they have an agenda. So he wanted to discuss kind of peripherally what Steve was getting at, so he set Steve up and then finally got to his point.
Well, he set him up by making the wrong prediction in the previous rewrite.
No, that's nothing new.
So that Steve noticed that he was wrong, so Steve comes in yelling, and the setup had happened like 3 rewrites before. That's how far ahead Ion operates. Did that make sense, or is that just funny what I said?
Well,
that does make sense.
It relates to the tipping off of the game, the Premier League football game. They were talking about, like, do you go way far back and, like, affect the, and he said, he gave, like, a picture of a man walking through a crowd.
Is this tonight or last week?
This is what you were playing tonight. And then, but he says, no, that was a long time ago. You know, like, that was, like we don't.
Yeah, back when I was eating ice cream with Moses, I think that started it off.
Oh, that's funny. Okay. But
didn't he say that he predicated the game, the winner, to coincide with that one person who made a bet where the odds were 999 to 1?
Yeah.
That's how he got out of it.
That was the reason why, because he said he's seeing 999 to 1. He's going to go with the 1.
Yeah, right. Yeah, when I was talking to the Krishna on the airplane coming back on, I guess it was Tuesday, he was saying this and that, and I was saying, I gave Moses the tablets, but he didn't hear me. He was understanding, but I was putting all these embeds in his head. Yeah, I was eating ice cream when I gave him the tablets. He's gone out of a Moses. It was pretty pretty funny, the subliminals that were happening that he was triggering as he went on about his great Christian life. I'm just reminding myself of that. You had to be there. You should have been there. You guys should have been listening to it. It was fucking hilarious, man.
Did you say anything about Ion to this Christian?
That's what I was saying. I was saying stuff to him, and he didn't hear it. He was too busy explaining himself.
But you didn't say out loud.
That's what you were saying?
And he didn't hear you.
He'd say something about Moses. I go, well, I gave him the tablets. When I was at the ice cream store, and he doesn't
So he didn't react at all?
I said all these guys. I said, you plan on dying, don't you? And he just went on, yeah. I said, well, I ain't dying. But he didn't respond to that.
You were saying all these outrageous things, and he just wasn't.
Yeah. And he was,
wow.
Do you remember hearing any of that, Carol? Did you notice? I think you might have been sleeping. I don't know if you heard me do that.
No, I avoided it.
Yeah, Carol did not. I was sitting there, the guy was spitting spittle in my face the whole fucking time, but I just sat there and took it. Because I knew if I got mad, the plane would crash. So I just had to sit there like yoga. But I enjoyed myself. If I'm stuck with this idiot, I'm going to say the most crazy things and see if he ever hears any of it. And he indicated no hearing of any of it until at the end when we said goodbye. He said, man, I'm going to Google all that stuff you were saying to me. And then he walked off. So, what?
Oh, yeah.
He couldn't run from the plane screaming like your caller from what you...
That's right, yeah.
Who hung up, I'm sure it was screaming from her phone.
Yeah, we had a good white youth. We had this young person, 23-year-old. He held the fort for almost an hour and a half asking questions. After listening to us for a year or so, he had a lot of questions. So it's pretty interesting how we responded to that. It was a group mind. There was a bunch of us. I was leading, but I had backup.
What are you talking about?
What youth? On Tuesday night, we had an actual 23-year-old call in that none of us knew.
I was there. I remember that.
Oh, yeah, you were part of that, Alyssa. Maybe you missed the first part.
No, I was listening. I didn't call in until later.
Right. So you heard how we were talking to this kid. He had relevant questions because he'd been heard a lot of things for about a year, and he finally said, I got to ask Bob about this and that. Of course, I was very devilish, wasn't I, in my answers?
You were what?
Wasn't I? Devilish or satanic or Luciferian or whatever. Negative. Put a negative word in there. Negative word. Wasn't I playful or something? Well, I had just rehearsed with the Christian on the airplane.
Oh, right, totally. Yeah, you had
just a few hours before. I was with the Christian. And
you had everything really dialed in there, Bob.
I like his comment when he said, the term android meme, I've looked it up. It doesn't seem to be a term from academia. I made it up.
He looked it up. Android meme. They didn't tell us that one. It's not in the dictionary. Yeah, it's pretty neat. Yeah, so I don't want to distract from polarity. There's more that Ian will say. Well, here's
another note I have. I have a note that says polarity is power, non-physical is frequency, physical is frequency, and when you merge the two, it's polarity.
You just said non-physical is frequency and physical is frequency. Did you mean that?
Yes. Yes.
They're the same.
Mm-hmm. No, it's two different frequencies, but when they merge, that's polarity. When the frequency of non-physical and physical is the same, it's polarity.
So is that like two different torsion fields that are coming into together? Are like reaching not a balance, but what does he say, or they say? So how does that relate to the torsion field?
Well, you just hold the pump here while I fill up the tire.
Okay.
Let's get practical here. We're pretend we're doing something because what's the point of saying this stuff? That's why when Roxy was explaining the chord, I can't figure it out unless I have a guitar in my mind and in my hand, and then I'm doing it. You know, that's the way you learn.
Well, the thing is, there are some aspects that haven't been clear out until now, like what is energy, and for example, in science, there's this talk about electromagnetic, that the magnetism is created by the force and the polarity of the particles, but we don't really know what is this electro. Maybe
you're saying that scientists don't know.
No, I mean, the way they explain, for example, the magnetic fields and frequency and all this has to do with what we call electricity. But until now, we don't have a definition of this.
Until now, you mean still ion. Are you saying
ion doesn't like the word energy?
Electricity?
Sorry? Are you saying till now, up until now we didn't know, but now you're saying we do know or have access through ion. Is that your point?
No, I think until now he hasn't really cleared up what is this, what we call energy or electricity.
Right. He has said it's not a useful term, and he did give a definition once in a particular ratio that's what the energy is, but it's always shifting. It's very hard to finish.
But this image online says the heart is about 100,000 times stronger electrically, so that wouldn't be something we would need to reference right now. But it does say up to 5,000 times stronger magnetically as well than the brain.
The heart is. They bring in the word magnetism for the heart.
Right. But they bring it in.
I figured. Okay, so you bring in that drop.
Everywhere where there is a current, around this current there is this, what we call electromagnetic field.
Right, yeah.
You're saying color, Roxy?
So there is a field around the heart, around the...
If you get moving particles and have a current, it creates a field.
We are like a circuit.
A ground.
Energy
That's like a figure ground.
Moving in our bodies, and around all current, there is always this field. But because my understanding from acoustics and physics are like the normal ones, but ion is still underlaying those concepts. But some of the concepts that we will need to really understand, the polarity, the magnetic field, the frequency. He's giving us practical examples, like...
Right, but in your case, you're a musician, you work with the technology, and you know what the terms mean in your context. But, of course, if a new technology comes along like the RNA drops, then your concepts that you got won't apply to this new thing.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Because you'll require different operation as you use it. The using of it determines your sensory. That's McClone's point.
Some aspects of this that hasn't been explained, underlaid by ion, like what we call energy.
Right. Now, see, this is the difference between me and Carol and you guys. We're there looking at the things that Ion's making. So we're partly in there fixing the tire, and so we can have a better idea. And you guys aren't allowed in the room to see what the object looks like, and you're trying to listen from the outside and understand. And someone like Roxy, who has certain definitions that came up in her musical training, she's intuiting, I'm going to have to change what they taught me because there's a new instrument coming into the room.
And that's how I feel this whole, Payday thing is that and with ion, too, but it's just, it's talking about not even a concept. I can't even say that because I feel like that's not allowed. But
you can do it, yeah.
It's like multiple different metaphors and experiences that somebody personally had, trying to use the technology of words to talk about it. So there's increased change between understanding or what would be considered isness and are-ness.
Right. So,
like
because at the end, when she says everything is frequency, at the end...
Everything's what?
Ion says everything is frequency. So at the end, the link, the force or the link, the thing that links everything together is language, is words. That's
right. Now and we're always, until you understand the difference between word power and mortar, you're always in between thinking you need words to understand the object that you're going to handle, and then the new object changes your words, and that is the tactile dialectic constantly changing. That's what existence is.
I suppose, like, what we will call science is so complex to explain what's going at all levels, from the ionic, the particles, the cells, the organs, and how they interact with the heart, the brain.
Systematic.
And, that ion is doing that, like, in parts. Like, there are the aspects of the chemistry that had to change the structure in the environment and inside your body, in the interior and the outside landscapes.
Yeah. You see, Roxy's getting agility of the figure ground interplay by talking to me a lot and doing her thing, but she could be talking herself into rabbit holes. You got to remember that you get agility with the words. And that very gift or a skill will set you up. And that's another meaning of McLuhan.
Right.
Yes, and then you understand why Bob is talking all the time about Joyce and McLuhan, for example, because they saw that the word is the linking, the thing that really controls all polarity, magnetism, and frequency.
Oh, that's a good point.
Like the frequency modulation.
Okay, take hypnosis. If a medium hypnotizes a society, that means it has a magnetism, a frequency, and a polarity, and it sets people up to that range of what that is. I'm just applying those three terms to the medium as the message. And, that's what McLuhan wrote to Innes. He said it's not amplitude anymore, it's frequency modulation. That's what he told Innes in 1951, as if it was a difference between old form of modulation and frequency modulation. And probably that agrees that is true, that he knew the electric media would make people think in terms of frequencies because they were hearing them.
I guess maybe
where Zappa also comes in.
I was just going to say Zappa. Zappa's fucking mutating frequencies all the time, isn't he?
Yeah, he may not conceptualize, but he's actually, like, applying everything in what he's saying and his music, and seeing how everything is this conceptual continuity. Everything is related not only as a big work of art, but with the environment. And he also is aware that the substances affect your decisions and your actions. Yeah. And with this you are affecting also your words, and with this you affect the outer, the environment. So he had intuition.
Well, let me just throw he had this what? Intuition.
Intuition, like it's like your non-physical nose.
Yeah.
Like you were, for example, doing these things for 40 years, but you were not aware what you were doing really. But something you knew that you had
that was the right way to go.
Joyce and McLuhan.
Yeah, I feel that. I know what that will being a musician. And what that makes me think of, Bob, before you say your thing, is there was somebody posted, Roxy, I think it might have been you, but that time where he has somebody record a drum beat and somebody else record to something else and play them. Yeah, that is that's another way that he's understanding what he is trying to convey musically, like in it's coming from a different angle than normal, just like music and intuition.
So listen. He says that he was surprised that the two tapings from different concerts would sync up. He wasn't trying to get that. He was trying to get this.
Exactly,
and it's strangely synchronized. That sounds like what I do. He was going, nah, I'm not going to have it, and then it kept happening to him. So I may be literally acting out what Zappa was doing editing-wise. I mean, I'm going, nah, I'm not going to make it sync up, and then it does. It just occurred to me. I live Xenocracy, Carolyn.
Yes, and
Frank
actually,
was working for me.
The amazing thing with the Xenocracy is like how things that seem to be unrelated, like the work of Joyce or McLuhan and what you were doing or Zappa, at the end were part of the same big creation that brought I and them.
So when we posted this, we have the Zappa Plus Hour announcement, and then there's comments, and somebody came on and said, Bob is hijacking Zappa to make it be all about Bob and I. Did you see that comment?
I say that.
And you responded, and I said, we're just dealing with the facts, buddy. That's what I said. We're just dealing with the facts. He said, well, he's going to say, if he's smart, what fucking facts? I said, well, I'm here making the drops and the Coldplay. We have some things to prove that it was about us. But he didn't get that far to find out that point. But that's what I meant when I said, we're just dealing with the facts here. And then Roxy came in and put a paragraph in, didn't you? You said some complicated explanations of it. I like your pun on frequency. To freak out is to be engaged frequencies. Zappa coined the word freak out. He popularized it. The word that's not part of the language. Yeah, and that's playing with frequencies.
Because I see many similarities in the way he was working and the way you do your show, for example.
Yeah,
I was watching an interview with George Duke.
Yes.
He said he made this very complex audition and all, and then the first thing Zappa wanted him to play was a very stupid little song, and he said, no, I'm not doing that.
R&B triplets. Yeah, George Duke was a big famous jazz musician, comes to audition for Frank, and he's preparing his butt off for days before to be able to play all the complex Zappa stuff. So the first thing he told George to play was simple plink, 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 that triplet piano we like in those simple R&B 50 songs. He asked Duke, and Duke refused to play it. What do you fucking mean? It was too simple, he couldn't play it.
The thing that Zappa was auditioning, it was not only his ability to play, but his open mind.
Yes, that was more important. That's right.
What?
Have no limitations and play all styles.
Open mind.
The test was not what he could do, but was he ready for the unforeseen and the unexpected? Could he be open to playing it as soon as Frank asked for it? And he wasn't.
And then,
that goes back to being open to retrieval.
Just a minute, Roxy. Let's see what Alyssa's saying, because Alyssa's a musician, too. What are you saying, Alyssa?
I think there's something to do with being open to retrieval in a different way, like because there's no time.
Right. Rapid retrieval.
There's like an element of living out of time, therefore remaining open on a certain quote-unquote frequency to notice when these two unplanned things end up being, synchronizing in some way or being harmonious or
that's what I was
creating some sort of environment.
When I play the music the first 2 hours, I'm trying to find the most absurd shift, but see if it works or not. And every now and then somebody goes, wow, what a great shift.
Yes, because that was what Frank liked about Barres, that he was putting a lot of ideas that seemed to be unrelated in a peaceful, and that Edgar Barres.
Oh, his improvisation piece and other stuff.
Ionization.
Yeah, ionization.
He felt there is no limitation. What you should make only little songs and stay in one style. For him, that was like the thing that opened his mind.
Yeah. Well, I just read his younger brother's biography of Frank, or his life with him, and it's really fascinating. Like he said, very early he realized Frank was a lot smarter than him and was operating on some level that he had no clue about. And then he describes all these interesting things that happened with the both of them, and how in some cases he'd help, and in other cases Frank would help. But this whole interplay of the dumb guy, you know, it's that famous Grapes of Wrath. Remember the guy? One guy's smart, one guy's dumb, right? In that John Steinbeck novel, Grapes of Wrath.
No, that's of Mice and Men.
Mice and Men. Mice and Men, right. It's Mice and Men. But anyways, it was sort of like that, and Bobby is admitting it all the way along. He described how out of it he is, but he is important. So it's an interesting book of what it's like to be the person in the front row dealing with Frank as Frank grew and matured. You know, in the first 15 years. And they had a terrible father. Their father was a fucking maniac. It's really sad what they had to put through. But they've got a guy thinking he's a genius, the father. It's like Frank redid his father but was successful. But his father was doing new projects every 6 months. They moved every year to another part of the country because he was always quitting his job because he had a new business idea. So he had a nut father. And from Ion's perspective, they'd probably say, Frank, you wouldn't have become what you were unless you had a mirror of your father being you, but in the opposite way. You know, it was like totally set up. That Frank and Bobby had this very frustrating father.
And you know, the parallel for me with Zappa and with The Wake is that the fact that words are too limiting, and it's all about the sound and the different sounds, and that's the parallel with being open-ended in your imagination, because words are too limiting.
Why do you say sound?
Because I think if you restrict it to the power of the word per se as a word, that is too limiting. It's too limiting.
You're missing the word meaning.
But I would not disagree with that, that she saw words as being limited. On the contrary, I think she saw the great power of human creation in using this medium of language to make all types of
patterns or meaning.
And patterns. Yeah, and to translate everything.
But it's patterns. The patterns for individuals to make. It's not dictated what the pattern is or the meaning. Isn't it up to whoever's reading it to interpret it?
Form and content, Susanna. Form and content. So you look at the form. That means you're detached. You're not in it. But then when you engage the content, you're inside the sensory situation and you're being hypnotized by it. And you oscillate back and forth between the form and the content. So Zappa, he does all this conducting and writing and controlling, and he says when he improvises, he doesn't know what he's going to do next. So he's doing both tracks at the same time, organizing, looking for meaningful patterns, but breaking them and opening it up with his not knowing what he's going to do next. Remember, he never rehearsed. He never practiced guitar, and he's the best guitarist I've ever heard. Because he could put meaning in the guitar in the moment. He could make a pattern of it. That's what his brother did.
That is what's the parallel for me with Iondom, is opening up your imagination to create what is, it's undefinable. You create it.
No, but see, you're going one half. You have to also say, I get the meanings, the words. So that's why you were able to explain this stuff. You didn't open up your imagination to be able to explain this. You got it technically. You matched with what I was saying, and you could define what you did, 15 minutes ago. You had meaning in there. You had
propping.
Control.
Is that the propping? The propping up?
Yeah, it could be that word. The point is that Susanna hears strange ideas from Ion, strange sounds, even strange meanings. But then she puts it into sound meaning. Sound, sense. She makes it sound, but she thinks she's working with her imagination.
No. I'm saying that to go further into, I just have to create meaning for myself to create.
Yeah, you're doing that. And then you're telling us, and we're supposed to follow you. And some people can.
Well, but the thing is, language is this tool, this technology that helps us translate everything, the outside and the inner kingdom. And that's why Joyce and McLuhan had this fascination. And Joyce studied all aspects of language, also like more scientific, not only literary.
Yeah, philology and different language systems. But the thing is, he makes a book.
Really complex.
Now look at this, Roxy. He studies the details of language. He knows the linguistic explanations, and he makes a book where people say, "Oh, we're not supposed to understand it. We're just supposed to sing it." So he creates something that's the opposite of what he was doing.
Well, the thing with the work of art is he actually wanted to create a word that can never be explained completely. It's because every time you read it, you can get a different meaning, and depends on who you are, what you know.
If you didn't speak English, could you appreciate it?
No, I think you have. I never read that translation of the Wake, for example, in Spanish. I don't think that can be done.
Yeah, you limit it to one language.
Joyce was translated by Borges. Jose Luis Borges.
Yeah, but one thing you do, Roxy, is that because you know many different languages, Roxy, because you know many different languages, you see a lot more in a sentence than we do. You can see German in there, you can see Spanish, you can see Portuguese, or whatever other stuff you know, and we're just looking for English.
But that's my point, is that words in any particular language are limiting for that reason. It's not, you can't communicate whole to everyone. And if creation is communicating, and you're limited in your communication to them by, if you speak English, limited by the languages you speak, then are you limiting your creativity, your creations? And that's why I was taking it down to the sounds, and maybe that's why Ion was focusing on tones, and that the cells communicate at the cellular level with sound.
Is a caress meaning? If a caress feels good, you like it, you allow it, and that's meaningful. See, meaning goes in between semantic meaning, semantic content, and the sensory form massage itself. It's both.
Well, I think the English was that, like McLuhan said, is the control tower. With the electronic medium, the electronic environment, English became the main language because it is the language of science and technology. And
no, he said because it was measured in feet. Iambic pentameter, Roxy. He said, why is English used in rock and roll? Because it's measured in feet. And that was a pun, and that was iambic pentameter, but rock and roll became the language of the global village, replacing the Esperanto of jazz. So English worked better with rock, is what he said. And then he did say English was a control tower of human communication, but what English was he referring to? English literature or English language? Is the spaces in the global theater iambic?
I also ask Ion what did he came for in English and not in Chinese, that is the most spoken language, and also about languages that are disappearing. And he said these languages disappear because they lost their power of creation.
So he picked English because it had
non-physical is speaking English is in a way the language that has the most power of creation now is the
that was a good question
for the frequency modulation.
Didn't it come up about the chip body though being mainly English driven now, but it might change to Spanish or something like that?
Well,
I don't believe
I brought that up. Spanish became very prominent in the 90s in the Internet for some reason. And then Eric McLuhan said that's because Spanish was a proprioceptive language and the Internet is a proprioceptive medium. It's like traveling through your bloodstream or whatever you would imagine your bouncing senses are. So that I don't know if it would become number one, but it got a resurgence. But you're saying, Roxy, Spanish will not make it.
No, I don't think so.
Top language. And then there's also just sheer power. There's also the might makes right aspect. The Americans are English, so speak English, so they dominate. It's like the dollar. See, so it's a factor of muscles and rhythm and sight and sensitivity and smell, on all the words can mean.
There is a relationship with empires. Like, for example, there was a time when Latin was the main language. There was a time when French was the main language, and now English is the main language because of...
Well, I think a lot of this goes...
Elvis caused that.
Did you say Elvis Presley?
Yes, Elvis Presley. He got there first, and he was singing in English.
Yeah. Oh, there's got to be a precursor to Elvis. Elvis not going to change your life.
No, you know what? The precursor was Louis Armstrong.
The Big Bopper.
No, Louis Armstrong. He united the world.
Mm-hmm.
And, that's what McLuhan said. He said the blacks, so the acoustic space of jazz and Louis Armstrong united the world. So that was a new Esperanto. And then he said the subculture of literacy wanted to make the book important again. So they said, hey, you black guys, we'll make you have equal rights. We'll send you to schools, and you can you can learn to read, and you'll love our world. And we will create progress, and then everybody will be educated, and then we'll have one world. And the black just had to say, we already did that. We united the world with our jazz. And so so then the next step was they went for it, started learning the book stuff. By 1965, when you had the Watts Riot, which is, Zappa song Trouble Every Day, they said, wait a minute, we're learning all those books, and you white people aren't using literacy anymore. You're taking over with electronic technology. So they got mad that they were sent in a rearview mirror rabbit hole and started, protesting. Carol just laughs. He's never heard that. I've said that 100 fucking times. Just heard it the first time. Finally got it.
And that explains how Paul became a black woman.
Yeah, exactly. Very good. Who said that? Was that Roxy? Very good, Roxy. That's right. You've been hanging out with me too much. You know too many of my secrets, Roxy. See, Roxy's infiltrated. You guys should all make videos with me. You'll
so
start
you sure it was Louis Armstrong and not Josephine Baker?
No, that Josephine was important. You're right. But Louis, people couldn't be decadents and lesbians in Paris, but they could listen to music on the record player and the radio, no matter what they were, whether they were Christian, Muslim, or pagan, and that would be a bigger, more enveloping environment than being a prostitute in Paris.
Yeah, good point.
And it's Louis Armstrong.
Yeah, didn't someone tell me on the plane, Karen, we saw a movie about Josephine Baker? No, it was Bessie Smith. She was outrageous. She was really tough. She beat people up all the time. And she was a lesbian. There's a movie about her. They show that, how rough she was.
Bessie Smith or Josephine?
No, Bessie Smith. I'm pretty sure it was Bessie Smith. She was But the thing is, so you see how it's an interplay of people, power, emotion, and a whole bunch of other words. You just pile them up, and that's the interplay. The drama of cognition, of learning, of not learning. I reduce it to blocking and merging. You either merge and accept what the person is communicating, or you block it.
Mm-hmm. So that's like magnetism, polarity, and frequency is the interval between the isness and the arness.
And the blocking and the merging. So the blocking is magnetism, and the frequency is merging. And polarity is in between, because you guys have explained polarity is not what we think it is. It's what Ian says. It's
power.
Yeah, it's power. Physical merges with the non-physical. Mm-hmm. And then you have power, and that creates polarity, which in my immediate meaning, my immediate meaning is that you can talk for miles. You can use words because you're not involved with them. The mind creates polarity. So the more powerful you are, your mind is quite talkative because you're not identifying with it, because you've got the frequency and the magnetism down, so then you have no problem with polarity.
And that's where the open retrieval comes in again.
The open retrieval, yeah.
That's creating the vacuum.
Remaining open to your retrieval, because it made sense of what you guys were saying earlier.
You're talking about creating the vacuum with the magnetism because you're pushing it away, or the polarity is pulling apart or pushing, and it creates the vacuum. Although I must say, Ion didn't really get into the detail of how the vacuum is created.
Hey, yeah, what you just said there, the interplay of pushing and pulling, that's tactility. So vacuum is a tactility. Vacuum is another word for the weird space of non-sensory.
Right. But you can sense it.
Yes, that's the paradox of tactility. It is and it isn't at the same time. It's in Zen they talk about the void and the form. That is a simple version of the tactile process. I don't know. I like saying tactility. You could put any other word in there probably.
And I have here also written that magnetism is the application of the power and the polarity, the power polarity.
What were you going to say, Roxy? I think you were saying something there, and you got cut off.
Yes, that Ian always said, don't push against anything.
Yeah.
That's why JW is so powerful, because he doesn't push us against anything. That's how you don't want and manifest what you actually want. Like, you want something, but you don't make it a big deal. You just let it go, and it shows up.
That's the balancing act between engaging your senses and their desires and not being controlled by them. That's a simple way to say how art develops your senses to be more flexible and stiff and creative and rigid while being looser. See, that's the endless paradox. Sasha.
And that was the same thing. That's the same thing as Sasha's example of what happened to her when she was doing all the work on the graphic for whatever she was doing. And based on the outcome of one game, it could have caused her a whole lot more work if the game didn't turn out her way, or if it turned out a certain way. So she let it go, but let Ion know, or non-physical know, that she wasn't going to have it, and so it didn't happen.
Right. Now, I know what you're referring to, but I didn't follow it like you did. You were paying attention and catching what was being said as it was unfolding the past hour.
Because I'm awesome.
Oh, watch out. Come on now. Don't start bragging around a room full of braggarts.
I was focused.
Oh, yeah.
I found it extremely interesting. I was engrossed. I was embracing it.
It was almost like a bunch of surfers, and you caught the wave and the other guys didn't. You see that in surfing all the time, right? There's 5 guys out there.
I love
to surf. One surfer gets it, the other 4 don't.
Trying to understand this polarity, the magnetism, and the frequency, maybe it's not that important because there is a part of you that is the power and the knowing.
Right.
And it's acting like in an autonomic way. Like I might say, there are angels coming to your help, and you may not be aware how, or you haven't asked for their help. But something in you already ordered or talk to them. So that's
the paradox of ion becoming creative.
Of the mind.
I mean, Chad and I used to complain. Every week I would come up with a new pattern that we're supposed to figure out, and we said, this is a game. In the end, Ian will drop the pattern, but he would come in loving to talk, to create a dilemma, and then you'd try to understand him, and that would go on for a few hours. And then Ian would say, goodbye. You know, he's like a prankster. And he was engaging with language. Imitating what Macoons do with humans do with language.
Frank Zappa was doing that with each of his albums.
Yeah.
He would come with a lot of new concepts to bend. He said, I don't want to bend only the notes, I want to bend your mind.
Right.
He wants you to go beyond what you think, what you know, and have no limitations, and just not to be limited by what you can understand with the labyrinth of your mind. Like now, everybody's trying to understand the polarity, the magnetism, and the frequencies, but there are many parts to that it's not that easy to just say, oh, this is the distance is the magnetism and this and that. I think
right.
You just have to leave your own autonomic power to do what it knows. It's like your body is working without you thinking, now I have to breathe, now my blood is going to circulate.
Yeah.
Because there's so many things going on. The mind could not give the orders if you knew what's going on.
Right.
So I suppose it's the same.
And you know what I would say to that, Roxy? Wonderful words, but you couldn't be more wrong. You know, it does that. You lay out a pretty good, what you think is articulate statement, and I'll say wonderful words, but you couldn't be more wrong, because he's satirizing you, trying to explain it.
I'm trying to explain that it doesn't have to be explained, but you know what?
I know, yeah, you're fucking up there, yeah. You're getting us all concerned.
Practice doubt everything.
Yes. Yeah, but it is both. That's the best thing you could ever know, both and.
Yeah.
That's life. Life is both and. The and is the unforeseen stuff, because I would every week, some people would get what he was saying. They'd come in and start spouting it off the next week, and he'd just slam them down and come up with the opposite. So he was making...
The danger is that you may start making these rules that are limiting you, like, okay, the polarity is this, the magnetism is this, and the frequency is this, and so I have to do this, and...
Right.
And that won't serve you.
You know how...
and to that, I have a great quote from Bob from the rewrite of 39. And Bob, he said, the rule-making factor is an extension of the labyrinth of the mind, and it'll fuck you up every time.
That's right. You wrote that out, didn't you?
What?
The rule-making factor or faculty is an extension.
The rule-making factor is an extension of the labyrinth of the mind.
Right.
And will fuck you up every time.
But isn't language, that's what language is.
Yeah. Language is a rule of meaning.
Yes. Thank you, Alyssa. That was my point.
Your neighbor comes up, what was it? Somebody says about giving a finger over the last few hours, giving a finger in the middle of it. But someone goes up and speaks to you and says, is this where you get the bus? There's the existential dilemma presented to you. Do you tell them there's no time, no bus, that you got the bus inside them? Or do you say, oh, yeah, bus will come in 50 minutes? Which level do you become antisocial? Yeah, like, you know, if you imagine Ian at the bus stop, people say, "Where's the bus?" There is no bus. What do you mean? I've been on this bus for 3 years now. Every morning. No, you haven't.
Your lying eyes.
Yeah, don't believe your lying bum that's sitting in the lying seat by the lying bus driver. That's what Ian's doing. In the first, he's very good at going, oh, yeah, like, so somebody comes up and says, the bus comes here at 8 o'clock, and you go, oh.
That is a great idea. I'm going to do that more often. When somebody says something, I'll go, oh.
Yeah. Well, remember Zappa told the kids in that interview we were talking about last week, you say, I doubt it to everything that happens to you.
Oh. I know, I posted that on my Facebook.
Did you? You said, I doubt it?
Yeah. No, I posted the phrase.
You became a doubter terrorist. It'll be if that spreads, the government's going to put a stop to it because you can't have everybody else going around, you know, doubting everything. That would cause chaos. At the New York subway, there's thousands of people. The train comes in, everybody just stands there and refuses to get on because they doubt that the subway did arrive. That'd be a good avant-garde movie. But so we fell, and then we are retrieving Ion so that we can ascend. But Ion had to fall to help us ascend by Ion coming in and engaging in language.
Exactly, yeah.
That's the merger.
Cool.
Well, isn't that interesting? He said that in the last rewrite, 39, somewhere in there, he said, we are not going to come down to your frequency anymore.
Right. That was the new Ion. Yes, and he was developing it again in this session. He was explaining even more how he was saying, you notice we're kind of rougher, meaner, not so nice. And, you know, that was, you know, what was interesting is that just after that we started to realize he was a hologram. So he was actually anticipating us starting to have a new image of himself.
Right.
And you see how he does this ESP. He said, and so he's saying there, Sheldon, you're not speaking enough. He is demanding people to speak, so I'm just supporting my case. But that's the point there. Back then he was saying, Sheldon, you're not participating, you're not talking. He wants people to engage. That was the most important part. So, you know, Mateo, I think if this is happening, he's broadcasting us on YouTube. He said this week that I don't know what he did. He figured something out, and last week he broadcast us, but he had to mute it the first couple hours because of the music, and he couldn't have the copyright.
Sure.
So he asked me, what's coming up tonight, and when are you going to start this or that, so that he would know when to stop muting it or something. He just wanted to have a plan. But he could type.
Just said, yeah.
Just did. He goes, yes, and then he's giving the link to it. Oh, yeah, it's a very nice design. I'm going to go there now, see what that looks like. So what does it mean? That means we've bypassed Bill? We have to start paying Mateo money to do the broadcast? Now, Mateo says, week 141, Payday, I'm in charge live stream. Why is it 141? We've only been on twice. What's that mean?
Monday, he's talking about all the paydays that you've had so far.
Yeah, you can't organize this. You can't organize this in your way, Bob.
Right. You have to actually know something. Yeah, as you move into the 20th century, the less you know, the better. I am the artist of not knowing. I got the leap on everybody 50 years ago and decided, well, it was not important to know anything, just sort of engage. And that put me in the lead. I caught the wave, and Ian had to come to me. because I'd learned to use nothing.
Ah, sure. Doubt it. Kidding.
Yes, what will I do when everybody starts doubting everything I'm saying? Yeah, But, so we're looking at this. Let's see if he typed something. No, he didn't type anything anymore, so I'm looking at it. Week 141. It actually has the chat line. People can read it. But how could anybody find this YouTube channel? Who would be looking for it?
Somebody named Zion Banks has already said hi in the little Google thing.
Where's the little Google thing? What's that?
If you're signed into a Google account, it pulls up a little like option.
And you've got a Google account?
I guess I do.
Google, yeah. And someone said hi right now.
Well, no, I can't tell when he said hi. But how this works is when you log into your email, you kind of log into like an overall account. And so if you use Google Chrome, which is a Google app, then it's like tracking like what you're. It's like a parent login for like a bunch of different things. So that's why that's happening.
Yeah, this just brings up a point. One of Stang's people somehow interacted with me, and I told them to go listen to the archives. And they said, I can't get the archives on my smartphone or whatever phone they have. I wonder what Bill's doing about that, that as things get more and more complicated or developed, people won't even be able to get into our archives because their smartphone doesn't register that digital stuff. Digital dust, right?
Oh, because it's a QuickTime?
I wouldn't know anything about it. And she said, so she yells at me. She said, being a Stanger, she's typical Bob. He tells me to go do something, and I can't get it because he's got inferior technology, and I just wrote back, get a goddamn new phone. If you can't pick us up, get a new phone.
Does she have a flip phone?
What would Bill say? Bill should be listening to this and come in. What are we doing as people get more and more everything, smartphone, and everybody's getting it, and then all the new stuff that comes for it? I don't even have a cell phone. I'm going to get more and more isolated, right? Because I don't have anything to communicate in it. And if we represent ourselves through this archive and people can't get to it, that's our fault. And
but can they not get to it because it's obsolete in technology, the archive, and it won't register on the newer technology? Or is it the other way around?
Well, that's the question. So Bill would come in. Bill tries to keep up, but he has said to me that some things don't register. Some phones can't get there. But I think he considers most people aren't that advanced. They're one step back, and so they can get our site. And, ideally, Bill would come in right now and answer our questions. But he's probably sleeping, right? Shall I panic button him?
Is he Central or Eastern time?
He's California time.
Oh, California? I thought he was in South Dakota or something like that.
Right, but the network, he began in Tucson or Phoenix, someplace down there, and it's still there, the server, whereas he's in in Mountain Time, but the server is in California time, I think.
So are you saying that he lives in Mountain Time, even though in the LA time, even though he lives in Mountain or Central Time?
Yeah, he lives in whatever South Dakota is, and I think that's Mountain Time. But the system, the chief radio is on Phoenix or California time, I think.
So it would be midnight or 1 o'clock.
Well, it's all changing tonight. Remember, sneaking up on us they just got to 2 o'clock on the East Coast. They've just put their clock back.
Oh.
2 in the morning if you turn your clock back. So Mateo says YouTube benefits. Notes. Easier to jump to the playback of the note indicated. Playback speed. Speed up or slow down 5.52x. Chat line archived in sync with audio. Visual questions. Scrolling bar with info updates. Users. Better exposure, shareability, discovery. Archived on Google's hard drives. DVR feature, ability to rewind up to 2 hours during live broadcasts. So I didn't understand anything he's saying there, but maybe he's spreading the word. Maybe he's putting it out there. Well, see, he's doing it.
I get what he's saying.
He's doing
playback speed. The playback speed would be really helpful when Ion is going on a rant and you want to catch every word.
Yeah.
Oh, and you can replay in live time?
You can replay it slower.
Oh. Now, who was it? Oh, yeah.
Roxy. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm finished.
You're gonna ask it who was it or something, but I was gonna say, Roxy, I love when you put delay on your videos on the vocals.
When she does what? What does she do?
She puts delay on them.
Oh, and what happened?
Just in the last one, not always.
I know. I like when you do though. It's really fun.
Do you mean there's some technical gimmick thing in how you hear it?
No, I guess in some fragments I put some delay in the
delay.
Yeah, it's not a gimmick. It's just a thing.
In the last.
Okay, here, listen. We have to do something here. Leslie just came on, and Leslie's the one who experienced Zappa at the Broadside before Zappa was the Mothers, in the desert area. And she wrote earlier on Payday. Maybe you could tell us, you had a big reunion with the Zappa world today, which was the right day to do it. So what happened, Leslie?
Well, last weekend I was down in Ontario for my 50-year class reunion, and so we just drove around to the Broadside and all the places we knew Frank hung out. He lived on G Street, which is like 3 blocks away from where I lived, and then we went to Cucamonga, and I didn't know the address of his Z studio there, so we just went up Archibald, which I knew it was on Archibald, and we just
Archibald and Foothill. Now, Leslie, if you'd been on Dupes, I posted last week because of Alyssa. No, Alyssa posted my visit to the studio in '96 or so, and there
that's
street
awesome.
signs. So you could have, just last week, it was almost posted there for you to see the street intersection. You could have seen the building if you had somehow...
Archibald and Foothill, did you say?
It's Esquay. Foothill's the main, I think, further along. The main thing is Archibald and Foothill, but you come to Esquay, ESC something in Archibald, and right there in the corner is the building, if it's still there. I don't know if it's still there today.
I probably drove by it, but
what you do is you go to my timeline, go to 1996, maybe... Augustin. What's his name? Augustus? I haven't seen his name lately. Your son.
Oh, August. Yeah, August. He's out of town working, so he's not
but he
right
could
now.
send you the link. He could find it real easily on the timeline, and then you would see. We do. Jerry does photograph the cross sections. I mean, are you nearby? Okay. You went from Broadside to Cucamonga. That's close.
Yeah. Pomona, Ontario, Cucamonga are all right in a row. They're pretty close together,
So what's really fun is you were doing that this week. I'm reading Bobby Zappa's book, and there's 21 chapters, but 18 of them is a name of a town. There's Claremont, and then there's the other Claremont with C-A-A-I. Then there's Cucamonga and Lancaster and Pomona, and every chapter is a different town, and because they move to a different town every year.
Wow.
And
because of the job.
People. Yeah, because his father they don't know. The sons don't know that he kept getting fired or he just got bored. They didn't know, and he didn't tell them. But he always had a new plan. They'd go to the place, and it would be usually a disaster, and then within 6 or 8 months he'd realize that, and then they'd go somewhere else. And that's the drama in Frank's life.
Is the book mostly about his young life then? Like before Gail, you were saying on the chat line,
yeah,
he didn't even mention her.
He does not, and I know why he doesn't mention Gail. He doesn't like Gail. He doesn't mention anything about Gail and the kids. It's all about, he makes a big deal out of Kay Sherman, Frank's first wife, who took Frank to Pomona College to see Professor Carl Cohn, and that guy allowed Frank to sit in his composition classes in like 61, 62, and that was a big factor.
That's
so
cool.
Bobby makes a big deal out of the influence of Kay in Frank's life.
Wow.
Wait, was he not enrolled?
No, he had no money, and he couldn't afford the class. But here's what happened. Somehow, this guy's a famous composer, conductor, professor in Pomona College, I think it is. And he, Carl Cohn, and he's listed on Zappa's Freakout as one of the main influences on Frank, among 179 names. So they go to him, and Professor Cohn says to Kay, who's introducing Frank, and Frank, he said, sat there very quiet and polite and just looked around the office like he was the retarded person, and Kay had to speak for him. And he said, I've heard of Frank. My fellow professor, Susan Brightman, or some name like that, over in Stony Brook, New York State, has heard about Frank as a great composer. And so we do know about Frank. And so she asked him to let Frank just sit in and just audit. And Carl Cohn said, yes, he can. He won't get a credit. And so here's what happened. Frank did all his class. He showed up. The professor said he showed up every day, perfect attendance. He did all the assignments. But the kids would have to write composition stuff, the notes and bars on composition paper, and they do it all on paper. He was shocked. Frank did everything in India ink, which is what you do when you know what you're going to do and not going to make a mistake, and have to erase the India ink or something. Carl Cohn was flabbergasted that this kid knew exactly what he was doing and did his classroom stuff in India ink because he knew he wasn't going to make a mistake.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And then Frank only went through about 6 months and then left, but he got the basic skills of how to be a composer, how to write it out from this guy.
Oh.
But, so listen to this. So Frank disappeared, and years later he got a card, he and his wife, inviting them to a concert in UCLA's Poly Pavilion. And I don't know what, sometimes Frank did some orchestral work there, but who knows? So, yes, it was probably just a normal mother's concert. So he and his wife went there, and they were shocked at the vulgarities, the absurdities, that the concert, he said, was genius in performance, but his sensibilities were rattled by all the dirty stuff Frank was singing about. But he said, we had to go see Frank backstage anyways. I mean, we're determined to go see him and acknowledge that we used the tickets. So they get backstage, and he reports, I could actually go get the book and read it, he reports that he's totally shocked that Frank is so polite and aristocratic and not at all the maniac, Larry Flint hustler maniac he appeared to be on stage. He was shocked at how proper Frank was.
His Manipian satire.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
He was doing for...
I do that all the time.
Criticizing the Americana.
When Carolyn once every 10 years introduces me to someone in her world, if they have heard me on the radio, they can't believe. As a matter of fact, Matt Shepard, the guy who does 5body.com, I met his parents 15 years ago in Ontario. We went and met them. After Matt said they were outraged. You weren't the wild guy they were used to on the radio. You were this polite little guy, kind of boring and didn't say anything. And they were outraged. They wanted their live discarded, Bob. They wanted to have it happen right in their living room. But I didn't do it.
Well, didn't you say Roxana also said she was expecting somebody far different. And
oh, that's right. She expected Clint Eastwood. Yeah, it turned out to be a little boy playing with other little boys who thought everybody was his friend.
No, he's not very different from the public Bob. He's very very polite.
Well, I remember the first night, it was late, but I think you made some food for me, and I remember sitting there, and I said, I know she thinks I'm being, she's surprised at how polite I am. Like, I was listening, sitting there, listening to what she had to say, paying full attention to her. I wasn't saying anything, and I knew, I wasn't sure, but I suspected she was quite puzzled by that. I knew that's what I was doing. Do you remember that, Ron?
Were you disappointed? Were you disappointed, Roxana?
Shocking, because it was another person. It was not the Bob you know from the rest.
A double showed up. No. It was, in the long run, she liked it because she was really nervous. She said she was worried that this maniac, was coming into her place, and she didn't know what she was going to do about it.
It turned out to be Bob number 5.
Yeah, Bob number 5. The wrong guy showed up.
No, the thing is,
that's what Frank did.
He can start talking for hours, and I was like very, very aware. I have to follow the conversation and be intelligent and not to say stupid things or whatever. So at the beginning, I was like very nervous.
So you thought that I would talk for hours? Is that what you said?
You did talk for hours.
Are you saying I did talk for hours, or you expected me to do it? No, I'm making an either or. What's the answer?
I was expecting you to talk a lot, but
I didn't, right?
Yeah.
Are we on the same? Yeah, I didn't.
She said you did talk for hours.
Oh. No, is that right?
Bob, you don't remember? Bob doesn't remember.
No, later I did. Once she had the camera, then I didn't stop talking once there was a camera on me, but the first day or so there was no camera on me, so I didn't talk. Isn't that what you're saying, Roxy?
No.
Oh. Did I talk a lot the first night?
Yes.
You can't help yourself, Bob.
Yeah, but I thought it was very. Well, I remember being quiet during
all his previous experiences. He had been in Barcelona and.
Oh yeah, all the different things I've done.
But things.
I do remember being quiet during the dinner.
I don't remember that you were quiet.
Wow. Well, again, we delude ourselves. I thought I was being me.
Yeah, I was just relating that to the previous conversations in my head.
Yes, because the professor said Zappa was a complete different person on stage.
Yeah.
Yes, I was very shocked that Bob in person was so polite and so.
Okay, so I talked a lot, but I was very polite at it.
From the Bob on Payday.
Right now, so Leslie, so you did this, and now you haven't added anything to what you posted. What else did you get from this? Like you've become a Zappa. You thought he looked very handsome this week?
Oh, so then I get home, and of course I missed Payday because I was down there, and so I immediately go to Ion and Bob, and so the first thing that comes up is these interviews, and I thought you posted them, just like hours and hours of nonstop interviews. Is that?
I don't remember that. What was that?
I don't know. I went to Ion and Bob, and they just came up. Frank Zappa's interviews. There's like hours and hours of them. Is this not something you posted? I don't know how I got here. It's like, what?
Yeah, and so I don't know. So there is maybe one link you can. Yeah, you're not talking about me, Roxy, and Bert talking for 7 hours. You don't mean that. No, she's talking about actual Zappa stuff.
No.
Well, they have a new thing. You call it binge watching. Well, they will say you click on here, and there'll be 10 items, and it'll go from one to the next. You don't have to click. It'll just follow through. Maybe we posted one of those.
That's what this is, and it goes for hours, like 5 hours, and just one interview after another, and they're fascinating, and they're all with video, so you can see he's so gorgeous. Oh, man.
Yeah.
And there's what I was saying on the chat one, there's one Flo and Eddie talked to Frank Zappa in 1989, and he was just himself. It was like he was talking to a friend, and they were just rehashing all these people that they know and situations they were in, and just cracking up laughing, and it just...
I'll have to look at that. I don't recall that, Leslie.
Yeah.
I don't recall ever seeing that one. That sounds interesting.
Really? Well, yeah, it goes from one to another, and there's a lot with his kids, and there's a lot on when he was doing the with Tipper Gore. Lots of that. There's then there's.
So listen to this, Leslie. Listen to this. So in 1977, in September, when Carolyn went to UCLA to study at the pain control clinic for a couple of months, she had a good elective, and this was her final year of medicine. So the night before we flew out, Flo and Eddie were on this Canadian talk show, Peter Zosky, and they had a regular slot. So they would come in. So we were watching them. The next day, we're lining up to get on the plane, and they're there. Flo and Eddie are standing there because they're going to L.A., and so are we. So I go over and start talking to them, and I get so distracted talking to them that I put my suitcase down over there somewhere. Next thing we know, an older woman is totally flat on her face because she chipped over my bag that I'd left in the wrong place. So that started off my relationship with Flo and Eddie, is that they started saying, this Bob guy, he's a disaster. People are collapsing all around because he's left the bags here and there. So then we get on the plane, and they're up in first class. So I go up there and start continuing to talk to them. And now we get into an argument. They don't understand it. They've only been with Frank for 12 months or so. They think they're there a year and a half, and I'm telling them no, and I'm citing all the dates. And so they get a little irritated. I'm correcting their memories of their life with Frank because they weren't working with him at this point in 77. They'd stopped 6 years before. So it kind of got heated. So that's when the stewardess came along and said, are you sitting here in first class? And I said, no. And they said, we got to get out of here. So I got kicked out of first class because I was causing too much commotion with them. And he said, and one of them said, well, we'll come back and talk to you. And of course, they never did. They made sure they weren't going to get involved with me. So they were trying to just have a relaxing flight, and I showed up to cause a bit of a disturbance everywhere I went in their environment there on the plane. So that's my encounter with them.
Well,
and I still marvel. What?
They seemed like they were pretty good friends. They had a lot of friends in common. They had been to the same venues and stuff, and they were just cracking up about different events and about different things that happened, and they seemed like...
Well, look at this. Here's how it's connected. On Freak Out, there's a quote. Frank says, some executive says, well, Frank, we could clean you up and make you as big as the Turtles, which was Flo and Eddie. That's what they were in. They were in the Turtles. So there's a satirical statement about the Turtles in the first album on the liner notes. And then they kind of break up about 1970, and Frank is performing with the L.A. Philharmonic with Zubin Mehta in May 1970. He had broken up the Mothers, and Flo and Eddie came backstage after. And apparently, I heard later they might have known him a little bit, but they were fans of him, so they went to that concert. So they get talking to him backstage, and Frank realized, holy shit, he's got an opportunity here to get two great singers to be in a band, so he reforms the Mothers after breaking them up with a new band based on these two guys. And then they're with them, say, from June 70 till December 71. That's a year and a bit. Remember, it stops when Frank gets knocked off the stage around December 11th. 1971, and a week before they lost all their equipment in Switzerland, in Montreux, because the stage burnt down, and that's the Deep Purple song, Smoke on the Water, is about that. So they're saying that I said, you spent 12, 15 months or something. And they go, no, we were with them for 2 years, but they weren't. But they thought they were. See, there's the interesting stuff for me, is that they subjectively did so much with Frank, it did not make sense that they'd only been with him for 15 months, even though that was technically what had happened.
Wow. There's so
the subjectivity of their own life with Frank. And now in later interviews, one of the questions they would say before they did this one you're talking about, they say, we never understood why Frank wouldn't hang out with the musicians. He never stayed in the same hotel. And they must have found out eventually, but the reason was that he was not going to hang out with the mothers because some of them were smoking drugs and stuff, and he did not want to get busted. As a matter of fact, in the story of his brother, when Frank goes to New York and is doing the play at Garrick Theater, Bobby's goes back to college, and so Frank invites him to come for the summer when he's not at school, and do what, says Bobby. He says, you will get me my coffee and cigarettes. So Frank has started to become popular and big in 1967, and I realized the reason he got his brother to get the coffee and cigarettes, he knew he could be poisoned. So he had to get somebody who he trusted. And so Bobby did that all summer, but he couldn't face a career. He couldn't be a career on that. So he went back to school in the fall. But he said, I don't understand what Frank wanted me to do, and why did he want me to just do that? But I think it's because he was smart enough to know that he was becoming so controversial that someone could be out to get him. So he had to have a brother that trusted him, that he could trust to get the coffee and cigarettes. That's all he did.
There's some interviews, the Crossfire interviews. What was that guy's name on CNN? You could tell they hated each other. Most of the interviews.
Pat Buchanan.
Pat Buchanan, and then another one. What was that guy's name? Darn.
There was a John guy, John, the neocon guy, who really was yelling at Frank and called Frank disgusting and everything. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
He wasn't. He wasn't the host. He was a guest.
He just holds his own on all this stuff. He brings just everything down to a sentence, like big subjects like parenting. He says, well, one thing I'd say is just keep your kids away from religion, I mean, it's just has something to say on every subject, and he's amazing. He's so amazing. And a lot of it is still totally relevant for today. I mean, he could be talking about today's stuff. And
well, Leslie, let's update that, Leslie. It's totally relevant because he was a prophet of Iondom.
Yeah, there you go. Seems like
there you go. He was one of our prophets. And I spelled that out in 1995. I say that Frank Zappa, the Church of Subgenius, and whoever else I mentioned, were all John the Baptist for me.
Yeah. And in your
I was claiming I was the second coming in 95. 20 years ago.
In your interview with him, he's the first one I heard say everything is happening all the time, which is the same as everything's happening at once, but the way he said that a little bit different really helped me. It really helped me. Yeah. So he's saying this stuff way before we're all talking about it.
That's Finnegan's Wake.
Yes, Finnegan's Wake. Now, when I mentioned Finnegan's Wake to him once, he goes, why did anybody publish that? And I thought he was saying he didn't respect it or it was just garbage. So then when I talked to him through the Evergreens, I brought up that assumption that he didn't like the Wake. He said, no, I thought that book was awesome. And I said, well, what did you mean? Why did someone publish it? He said, I meant it's amazing that someone published such an amazing artwork. Just like Frank would say, it's amazing that he got a record contract. Tom Wilson misinterpreted the band. That's the only reason they got a recording contract. Frank tells a story all the time. Tom Wilson comes out from MGM or someplace in New York, and he had done Bob Dylan and everybody. He was a big producer, and he doesn't go to the Zappa playing at the Whiskey until the last song because he was he had some groupies at another club. So he's forced to go to see the last song by Frank's manager, and he walks in and they're doing some R&B thing, and so he immediately says, "Oh, they're an R&B group. Yeah, we need to sign an R&B group," and signed them up. Phoned New York and signed them up. Then they get in a recording studio, and Wilson walks in, and they're doing Return of the Son of Monster Magnet and all this abstract Edgar Varese stuff, and he says, "What the fuck is this?" And Frank says, I immediately saw him get on the phone, and he's haranguing, he's apologizing to the New York office that he signed a group that wasn't an R&B group. But Frank got away with it, and that's how the album got done. So, someone could say, I'm amazed that Frank got a recording contract. That's what Frank meant when he said, I'm amazed that someone published Fitting Its Wake. It was so out there. So that through the Evergreens, he was complimenting it. But that's not the way it came across when he was in person.
That's true. I am actually amazed it got published, too. I mean, who can even understand it now? No one can. That's crazy.
Yeah, the reason it got published is he had T.S. Eliot on the side, and T.S. Eliot ran Faber and Faber, and Eliot had praised Ulysses. It's only because Joyce had done well with Ulysses that they assumed, well, we don't know what this book's about, but I guess we better publish it. We made Joyce a famous writer, so he snuck in. He got Fitting Its Wake published, and thanks to T.S. Eliot. I mean, Ezra Pound and Lewis were knocking it all through the 30s.
Wow.
Anyway, so you say we went to Cucamonga. Who are you talking? Who'd you go with?
Oh, my good friend from high school.
Did they know about Zappa?
Oh yeah, she's the one I went to the Broadside with. All the time, yeah.
Oh, okay, so she.
Yeah, but I talked to a lot of people, and I asked them about Zappa, and I couldn't get any real enthusiasm up,
From anybody.
Yeah,
in your high school,
I mean, I didn't talk to that many people. Yeah, right.
But nobody was interested.
Not so much. No, they didn't. They didn't think he was the big deal that I thought he was. A lot of people didn't ever like Zappa. That's
what you see in the book. He's getting beat up all the time. He's being attacked physically by the in crowd at the various high schools, by the elites. They were never considered as welcome because they were Italians.
Oh,
and poor Italians at that.
He was very controversial. I mean, he was very opinionated and stuck to his opinions, and of course, he was very controversial. But once you get used to listening to his music, I don't know. For me, it's like meat and potatoes, and everything else is like fluff. Yeah. I don't know. His music really gets into your whole being. It just really does. He's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the other thought there, so I think you would enjoy the book because it's all about your area that you grew up in. All the different towns are the towns in your area where you grew up.
Yeah, definitely get it. For sure.
Yeah, you have to go to bobzappa.com.
Bobzappa.com. I went there. Yeah, okay. Bobzappa.com. Very good, yeah. So
and now there's an interview. Scott Woods discovered a Barbara Flaska, Flaska, and Scott interviews her a few years ago, and she had been doing a blog that he was looking at, and she always talked about knowing Frank and different stories. It turned out her sister was going with Frank, and the way I place it, it would have been just before he met Kay Sherman. So this was the girlfriend before Kay Sherman. And so this woman, Barbara, has a lot of interesting stories about what Frank was like right in that period when he's out of high school and sort of around college and not going to college that Bobby writes about. So you have an actual complimentary recording you can listen to that fits in with the book. With this Barbara Flask.
I think I read he went to Chaffey College for a while, too.
Yeah, that was his father wanted him to go to college. And Frank had no desire to, no reason to. He was going to be a musician, and he didn't respect the educational system. But to appease his father, he went. But he only went for a few months, and then he met Kay Sherman, and they got married, and then he had to work. And he got a job in an advertising company, drawing greeting cards. He did that for a few years.
Oh, yeah.
And then Kay worked in the bank.
He wasn't big on school at all. He says things, if I could find the quote, he says things about not going to school, teaching yourself. I mean, and this was before the computer age. I mean, now we say this, but he was saying it way back then. I mean, it's just almost eerie how he was so ahead of his time. He just, I don't know. It was really, back then nobody listened to someone who said, get out and don't go to school, you know. Now, who wants to,
he had that on his first album, 1966, on Freakout. He was telling people who bought it to drop out of school and go to the library. And we were reading some of the interviews last week. Right. He said, and if you're not interested, okay, go back and work on your car. But for those that might be interested more, he had a whole program for them. Actually, we got to stop talking about Frank at this point because we got to do an official Frank thing later.
Hey, Bob.
Yes.
Just one thing that, are you familiar with the show Antiques Roadshow?
Is that the one that found the painting?
Yes. Did you see that? It was Zappa's painting that he did in college that his girlfriend had, and I can't remember if it was his girlfriend that came on the show and had it appraised or a friend of hers. But
I think Bobby Zappa was even on one of those shows. He talked about being interviewed about that painting, and it was found in a southern shop for $5 or selling for $5, and now it's worth $25,000 or something.
Oh, and the guy that was just doing an eye about Frank Zappa, giving him all the credit about that he was, a driving force for music in the 20th century.
Who was giving him credit?
The person who was appraising the painting on the show.
Oh, yeah. Well, more and more people realize Zappa was I'll go so far as to say he's the greatest musician to ever live because he's the last human musician who takes advantage of the technologies that are here before Web 2.0. Once you have Web 2.0, anybody can make sound and do anything. But before that, Frank was the guy taking advantage of what was available, that you had to be smart to be able to understand it and do it and then make great music. So he's the punchline. Just like Joyce is the punchline with Finnegan's Wake.
That's cool.
So Frank was artistic, not just in music, but also as an artist.
When he was a kid, he was more of a drawer than a musician. He also was fascinated with chemicals, probably because his father worked in the chemical warfare thing, and he almost blew himself up a couple of times. But he would make explosives when he was young.
Huh. But it's the whole environment that he is, not his bits and pieces, that make him the exclamation point.
Yeah, that he was more than anything. He was doing everything like Finnegan's Wake does. He was everything that one could be as a human being. He started making movies. He was really a movie maker right there at the beginning when he was forming rock bands. So he was doing all the arts, taping everybody like Andy Warhol was doing. He was taping everybody since he was a teenager. Yeah, and he did advertising. He invented ads and made a little name for himself in his creativity and his advertising work.
Yeah, because you don't create that sort of meat and potatoes. Who are you still here? What's your name?
With who?
Somebody was talking about
the meat and potatoes.
Leslie. Yeah, because the meat and potatoes that you're getting is not coming from his being a virtuoso in a musicianship type of way, or even because he would maybe make a nice composition musically. It's everything else that's getting squeezed into what he's doing musically that is a part of the whole, impact.
Well, when you read these early interviews, he definitely wanted to take over the world. he personally was going to become president of the United States. He started very early talking about becoming president. Like he was like a reverse of Jesus. I guess Jesus didn't want to become like Caesar, but he wanted to have a big impact. Well, it was a more complex time for Frank, so he said, well, we have to become Caesar to change this world.
Was that after he met you, Bob?
No comment. I forgot that I was going to cause that. Yes, we shouldn't talk about that. That's right. Jesus, damn, we have to get Bill to erase this part. I forgot.
What are we talking about?
Yes. I ran several people for president: McLuhan, LaRouche, May, and Zappa, and Peter. I ran 4 people, and they all got snuffed, leaving me with the guy who's trying to figure out how to do it without getting... any of you guys want to run for president? Yeah, you want to be a genius? Out there, promote you. Do we have any talent here?
That's terrible. He had an opinion on everything, and not just an opinion, but clearly precise.
Well, he read everything. This is what you learn. Frank, when he was interviewed in his 20s, he said he didn't read. It made him fall asleep. But his brother says Frank was a voracious reader, probably since he was 8 years old, and he read everything. So he did all his reading homework before he was 18, so to speak. Oh, and so he did say confidentially, you could figure out the timing here, I might have saying this, but he said to his brother later, he says, I've made a pact with the devil. That's what he said. His brother's still reeling from it.
Really? What was the tone?
Every Halloween. Was that you, Bob?
I think I certainly could be a candidate to make the short list of who it was, yes.
But the electric environment.
But Bob, really, to get what you mean by referencing that, what was Zappa's tone? What did you infer from Bobby's writing?
Oh, he was very serious, and Bobby, he writes about it in the book that it's a major thought he can't get out of his head. He said Frank got very involved with UFOs and occult stuff, like when he was 17 or 18, and Satanism and looking into all that weird stuff, which nobody did back then, in suburbia. So Bobby says, I thought he was just trying to impress with me about how risky he could go to weird topics. But then after he did all this research and sometime later said very seriously, I've made a pact with the devil, Bobby was shocked and never got over it. He talks about it at the end of the book. He kind of comes back to it. He says, maybe Frank did do something like that.
But I think he was really interested in topics that are very important in IANDOM, like different issues about freedom, about sex and coitus, about censorship, and also this mystery landscape. And
he did it all. But that's what we're going to talk about when we get the official Zappa hour. So let's not go into that right now. So do you... people want to talk about something else. No, I mean, we got to do it. I don't know.
Bob, you're attracting it by saying to not do it.
I know, but see, I have to mute you people. You guys aren't qualified to participate. But I don't know, maybe you are. But
let the energy flow. It's like music.
Yeah, but Ed has to edit this. You say that you can be here a good stretch of time. Why don't we do the McLuhan first? That'll drive a lot of people away. Then we won't have the problem.
The magnetism of McLuhan, Roxy.
What'd you say?
It's a magnetism.
Yes, the monster magnet. So, that was Lewis's term for the global village, the magnetic city. That's what he called it. Way back in the 50s, magnetic city, and McLuhan would say, well, the global village is not a time of peaceful fusion. There's more fission than ever when you have a global village. Everybody hates each other. There's too much familiarity. So that could be the magnetic meaning. Everybody's repulsed. And politics is becoming more and more polarized, they say, over the last 30 years. Washington's polarized. That's polarity. So all these characteristics that Ian's talking about are in the environment, in our Android mediascape.
Yeah.
Resonance would be the entertainers. Vibrational frequency, the Kardashians, they've got the frequency down, right? So everybody's hypnotized by them. And then Bernie Sanders is arguing with Donald Trump. There's a polarity. And then what would be the magnetism? That would be the Al-Qaeda.
Bob.
Yeah, Bob and the Al-Qaeda. Bob's army. Bob's terrorist army. Oh, I just heard Bert. That was Bert, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we could always tell Bert's laugh.
You've been laughing for a while.
Yeah, hey, Bob, going back to Ion talking about magnetism, polarity, and frequency, they're introducing something new because at the end of 39, they said that magnetism, polarity, and frequency is a way to look at the Grand Central Station. So,
good point.
Yeah,
so, I mean,
it's all very useful.
Yeah, and then they also said...
But the parallel worlding, just so people know, Grand Central Station is the central place you parallel world through.
But then there was something else that they dropped at the end that blew me away, because they have us thinking about what we think magnetism is and what we think we kind of know what polarity and frequency. But then there's one point Ion said that polarity is where covalent bonding takes place.
Right. Now, that's normal fucked up bonding. The good bonding is ionic bonding.
Yes.
So you're not
What do you mean fucked up bonding?
Well, covalent is normal stuff, and when you bring the I cell in, that's when you get into ionic bonding, which creates a different
it's like the old science.
Yeah.
The covalent bond is the sharing of electrons, whereas the ionic bond is giving up.
Is it?
And taking.
You know that? The theory, or you know that?
I know that.
Okay, good. And who's saying that? Is that Susanna or Alyssa? Well, that's good. Yeah, that's the giving up, relaxing and allowing. Now, that's my point. The connecting is a fallen situation. The non-connecting is not fallen.
Mm-hmm. It's funny because in old science, or I don't know, typical science, what the term would be, but they think that covalent bonds are stronger.
Yeah. Yep, they're probably wrong.
Yeah, they're held in that view, though. That's interesting. That's something there.
They're what? What did you just say? They're housed?
They're held in that view. They're like holding themselves there.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Bert, you heard this by rehearing the rewrite.
Yes.
Re-listening to it closely.
Yes, there was one point where they said that polarity would be where covalent or ionic bonding occurs, or the lack thereof. That was the quote.
Wow.
But they didn't go. The participants didn't go into it because they were, there was a lot of information laid out in 39. But that's what they said at the end. That polarity is where it would be where.
See, I stay on the big level. So what you're saying, I don't know the details of magnetism, polarity, and duality in that, but it supports my bigger principle that connecting is the fallen condition. And the electrons are panic buttons, little people, running around trying to connect and share themselves, right? That's little men.
Yeah.
And so when you say that Ion says, no, magnetism, repulsion, polarity is good, it's not the panicky electron. it implies something different from what we expect, and then that just fits into my general principle I'm working with. So,
but then where did neutrinos come in?
With the coefficient
one at a time, please. One at a time. What?
Yes, that I think it has to do with the coefficient that it's not about connecting but merging, fusing.
Yeah. And freeing. It's like merging and disconnecting. I think both go on at the same time. You know, because it's tactile. It's not visualizable what's actually happening. If you just limit it to a vision of merging, that's not the story. And if you just have it as disconnecting, that's not the story. So Bert noticed that they are implying something different from all the meanings that people were putting in magnetism and polarity in that up to that point. Bert says, well, they're going in another direction. But they didn't spell it out, did they, Bert?
No, but at the very end. At the very end, they said at the point at which you and you are connected will be an ionic covalent bond, which is new.
Yeah, that's both. See, he took the two polarized and made them merge.
Yeah.
Was it ion, what was the term again? Ionic covalent?
Ionic covalent bond. Yeah, which is putting together ionic bonding and covalent bonding.
Mm-hmm.
Which is new.
I wonder if that has to do with the seemingly like dimensional. Well, whatever. Sometimes when I get this idea and I want to like express it in words, then I just am like, well, what's the point?
Well, ion gives you that alibi. If before ion, you would be upset that you going. What's the point? But now you know, with the drops and everything, you don't have to give a damn.
Yeah. So I think that there's an element of dimensionality, and that relates to the frequency, magnetism, polarity that comes with the two bonds coalescing, or I don't know if they're overlapping or how that's working. I would like to ask Ion that.
Yeah, we were talking about conductivity. So this is a quote I noticed when I was looking through cleaning up my email, and this is something from 2013. I don't know if I'm quoting exact words. It says, "The more I think about this and the thinning of the veil is that the veil is not a screen but a conductor. And ion is or dielectric through ionic voltage that purifies the source." In brackets, the flow with less interference. So that was just a quote. I don't know where it comes from, but pretty interesting. The more I think about this and the thinning of the veil is that the veil is not a screen but a conductor. And ion is the shielding or dielectric through ionic voltage that purifies, in brackets, allows the flow with less interference, the source.
Right. It seems to relate to from the outside in.
Yeah, that was Sasha was going on about that, the outside in.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was wondering if little Sarah was here. Is that your number, little Sarah? It says Pequot. Could that be Michael? You want to speak, Sarah? Oh, she's not going to speak.
I wanted to say hi to two of my friends. They're going to jump from a plane, and they said, "We hope we don't die." But they said they're going to be listening around this time before they jump, and I said, okay, I'll just say hi to you, and I hope you don't die.
How do they listen while they're up in a plane?
Zach and Luis. Well, you can pay, and you get a license to parachute. It's their first jump, but they say they have
to. Are they jumping alone?
No. The first jump, you do it with somebody
I've done that
behind you. Yeah, so that's the first
what's
jump.
The name?
They will be listening now, and I just want to say, hope you survive. Isaac.
Right. What's their name? Zach and Louis? Is that what you said?
Isaac and Luis.
Luis. That's two men.
You don't really,
two guys.
You don't really feel like you're falling.
No more golf.
Why are you bringing this up? I don't remember.